You're watching the Luca Rosano Show. Here's your host, Luca Rosano.
What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to another edition of the Luca Rosano Show. I'm your host, Luca Rosano, joined by a very special guest. I got with me my main guy, senior writer of Heavy.com and the host of the Scoop B Radio podcast, Brandon Scoop B Robinson. How you doing, man? Welcome to the show.
Luca, ¿cómo estás?
Listen, I really appreciate this. I've been following your work for a while. You've got some really good work under your belt. And before we dive into it, I do want to talk about the beginning of the week. So as we all know, the Kobe Bryant Memorial did take place on Monday. And I wanted to get your thoughts on that to begin the show. What were your thoughts on that ceremony, Scoop? And what's the type of impact Kobe Bryant had on you and continues to have on you and your work?
I'll be honest with you, I didn't watch it. I was busy working, and I kind of followed along with it via Twitter and Instagram. What I could share with you is I did know Kobe. I knew, or I still do know his father. I know his cousins. I know some of his in-laws. So for me, it definitely was it was touching to see how many people did, speak out about him and, the type of person that he was, the type of competitor that he was. And it had an impact on me, just kind of being in NBA locker rooms and talking to different scouts and just different people who work with the Lakers. His work ethic is something that really stands out to me. I'm actually writing something right now. I interviewed an author who basically told me that when Kobe started in the NBA and signed with Adidas actually asked him to shave his head because they wanted him to be like Mike.
Wow.
And, I thought that was pretty interesting. I'll drop it later today at Heavy.com. I thought that was interesting. And just overall, just Kobe's story. One of the last times that I sat with him and interviewed him, we talked about, going out on top, in the same way that Peyton Manning did when he won a Super Bowl with the Denver Broncos. And, he said it would have been amazing to do it, but it wasn't meant to be. But he still won 5 NBA championships, and, most people don't win one. I think that his competitive nature. I also went to school at Eastern University, which is literally minutes down the street from Lower Merion High School. And so I spent a lot of time at Lower Merion in the area, and actually wrote a feature story on, interviewed 2 people, one who went to school with Kobe and one who, ran his camps and stuff at Lower Merion. And, it just, pretty much everybody just said his competitive nature and the fact that he was actually a nice person with people. He was, he loved the game of basketball, but realized that it was bigger than just that.
Were you able to catch Michael Jordan's words afterwards of Kobe?
I did. I think that it was heartfelt, particularly the crying Jordan meme was something that he discussed himself. We all grew up wanting to be like Mike. But the funny thing is, I spoke to Kyle Anderson of the Memphis Grizzlies a couple of weeks ago. And one of the things he said to me was, I didn't watch Michael play, but I was blessed with the opportunity to watch on YouTube and on television after the fact. But he said, literally, Kobe was my generation's Michael Jordan. And it's interesting to hear that because for me, I'm older than Kyle. I'm old enough to remember Michael during the first championship of '91, which is when I, started watching basketball. But to hear someone like Kyle Anderson, who's old enough to be my little brother, say that, it speaks volumes. It's kind of weird when you think about it, but that is because I think Kobe was a tweener himself. He grew up watching Michael, but he also grew up watching Isaiah and Magic.
Yeah.
He was a second generation basketball player with his father playing for the Rockets and the Sixers. So he was in the Lakers locker room and grew up, watching those guys. So it's interesting, but it is true. He is this generation's Michael Jordan.
Oh, undoubtedly. I agree with that statement. And guys, you can follow all of Scoop's work. Check him out. All the links to his Twitter handles, to, of course, Heavy.com will be down below. Scoop, I just want to switch gears now. I want to talk about the battle in LA right now between the Lakers and the Clippers. I mean, we've been talking about these two teams since the beginning of the offseason. Who do you ultimately think has the edge over the other team? I mean, if you had to bet on one team as of today, who would it be and why?
Well, my late father and I used to bet my freshman year of college when we were going on vacation. We would bet throwback jerseys, and I lost a lot of betting wars with him in games. And my lesson from him was don't bet. And so I don't bet. But if I had to make a prediction, that's pretty hard too, because I think that you're looking at a Lakers team who has a ton of chemistry. I was with Trey Daniels last week, the Lakers, and he talked about a group text that the Lakers actually have, which basically details, the word of encouragement. It's a source of encouragement for all those guys, and their chemistry is a plus. You talk to anybody. You talked to Danny Green a couple days ago. Danny just preaches the whole chemistry thing. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, same thing. And you're really talking about a Lakers team that's built around LeBron and Anthony Davis. Anthony Davis coming this offseason, and you added pieces like Dwight Howard. But comparatively, when you look at the Los Angeles Clippers, they're nothing to sneeze at, particularly because last season their best player on that team was coming off the bench in Lou Williams. So you basically had Montrezl Harrell, Patrick Beverley, Lou Williams, and some of those other pieces. And then in the offseason, you bring in Kawhi Leonard as a free agent, and you trade essentially Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Danilo Gallinari for Paul George send him over to the Oklahoma City Thunder. And you didn't know what you were getting because he was coming off a rotator cuff injury, as I first reported last April. But, specifically as it relates to both teams, I think from top to bottom, the Clippers have a good team at large even before Kawhi and Paul George came on board. But cohesively, you haven't been able to see all those guys play together in a playoff series. But the same thing can be said about the Lakers. The Clippers are more of a formidable team because you saw what they could do in the playoffs last season. They went toe-to-toe with the Golden State Warriors, a very potent Golden State Warriors team pre-Kevin Durant injury. And then you look at the Lakers. I mean, LeBron's been playoff tested. Anthony Davis has made maybe one trip to the NBA playoffs as a member of the New Orleans Pelicans. And then you have Danny Green, who's coming off of an NBA Finals win last season out in Toronto, your home country of Canada.
Yeah.
So Canada, answer your question, I think is deadlocked at both LA teams, but you also can't sleep on some of the other teams in the Western Conference. You can't sleep on the Denver Nuggets, who I think quietly has a substantial second-seeded team under head coach Malone. And, I think everybody's just, ready to give the crown to Los Angeles, but the season is not over, and, the playoffs haven't started yet. But, the two LA teams are quite attractive. And I think the part about the Clippers that I think the Lakers gifted the Clippers on was one in Ivica Zubac, who was traded to the Clippers and, worked out with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar this past summer and got better. I think in this NBA right now, the big man is making a comeback. And he's definitely a hybrid big man, a guy that can, that can shoot, that can post up, and a guy that, from top to bottom, I think can play well. So I think that both of those two LA teams are great teams, and you've got a Kawhi Leonard-led Clippers team who, has something to prove. For years, the Clippers have been the Lakers' little brother, and it's a coming of age. So it's going to be interesting.
And I just want to stick with the Lakers quickly here, Scoop. I want to get your take on this. So obviously, the recent news out of Lakerland, DeMarcus Cousins. They parted ways with him, then they went on and got Morris. What was your instant reaction to that? And then also, you had tweeted out about a month ago that the Lakers had invited J.R. Smith to a couple of workouts. Do you have an update on that? And if that could come to fruition? I even saw, earlier today that Dion Waiters is another guy that the Lakers are going to feel out. First, what was your reaction to the DeMarcus Cousins news? And is there a guy the Lakers can get as we enter, obviously, the second half of the season into the postseason push?
Well, it was disheartening that they ultimately had to, cut ties with DeMarcus. And what will end up happening is, he's still rehabbing and doing what he needs to do. DeMarcus maintains a residence in the Las Vegas area. And since he's already set up shop in Los Angeles, in his rehab with guys like assistant coach Phil Handy, on-court football drills and others, he'll remain in Los Angeles from now to the foreseeable future. Definitely a freak injury, working out, and was looking to get himself in order. I talked to DeMarcus. I actually ran into DeMarcus a few weeks ago, and he was all spirits and all cheers, waiting for things to come to fruition. But just that injury and the magnitude that it takes to come back, you want to kind of preserve yourself for the long run, not just to get it right, going into the playoffs, because to be honest with you, he'd be repeating what he did last season where he got hurt.
That's right.
I think in this situation, with DeMarcus Cousins, the Lakers had to find something that would help them in the interim. Legitimately, they have a chance to be the world champions, and I think also it benefits Kyle Kuzma, and it benefits Kyle Kuzma because they're using him as a hybrid 3-4, kind of like how the Knicks were using Carmelo Anthony in his last few years in New York, and also how the Clippers were using Paul Pierce later on. And Kuzma is really a slasher who could do damage in the playoffs, and as a third option alongside Anthony Davis and LeBron James. So I think, when you look at the Lakers and what they were able to do, I think Morris was definitely a steal. He's another example of a clutch guy that has found their way to Los Angeles, and it's interesting. But there is talk that DeMarcus Cousins could return next season. I placed a phone call to someone in the know, and asked if the Miami Heat would be an option for DeMarcus, going into the playoffs. And this was, of course, before it was reported that he'll end up staying with the Lakers and rehabbing. But from someone I spoke to, they basically said if DeMarcus were to go to the Miami Heat, he'd lose about 25 pounds, and he could be a benefit to the Miami Heat. But it doesn't look like that's going to be the case. And to your question about J.R. Smith, he is in Los Angeles currently. He said on Instagram Q&A yesterday that he's gotten a call from neither the Los Angeles Clippers or the Los Angeles Lakers. Last month, I was tipped off by someone within the Lakers organization who shared with me that he would, this was on January 25th, that he would be getting a workout with the Los Angeles Lakers the very next day. Kobe Bryant died in a tragic helicopter accident in Calabasas, California. So the Lakers are playing catch up in what they're doing, but at the same time, they're being very strategic. Just for those who are not familiar, you can still be on an NBA playoff roster as long as you're signed by the end of the season. The Lakers, as reported by Yahoo Sports' Chris Haynes, will be meeting with Dion Waiters on March 2nd, which is Monday, this coming Monday. So, again, it's a meeting. That doesn't mean that it's a foregone conclusion that he's signing. Waiters is also represented by Clutch as well, as is J.R. Smith. And, I think the Lakers are taking their time and being prudent in their approach and what they're doing. But, yes, J.R. Smith did work out with the Lakers. But the thing about it is, J.R. Smith has been between New York and Los Angeles for the past few months. Only played 11 games last season with the Cleveland Cavaliers. A former a teammate of LeBron James is in Cleveland. And it's funny, I actually had Ben Golliver of the Washington Post on the Scoopy Radio podcast in the fall. And he said to me that unless he gets LeBron James's seal of approval, he doesn't see J.R. Smith playing for the Lakers. And then lo and behold, LeBron is on social media, singing J.R. Smith's praises. He said that he used to call him 911 because when you needed a bucket in a hurry, there he was. So I have no new news to report on J.R. Smith's free agency, or his future plans. But yes, the Lakers do have their hands full trying to fill out that last spot.
That's good stuff right there from Scoop B. Scoop, let's switch gears now. You obviously know I cover the Raptors here in Toronto, Canada. I'm a fan myself. I want to get your thoughts on this team. I mean, in my opinion, it's been remarkable what they've been able to do without Kawhi Leonard, currently situated second in the East. I know they're following up a tough loss against the Bucks, but what have been your overall thoughts on this team leading up to this point? And do you consider the Raptors to be a legitimate favorite in terms of coming out of the East?
I wouldn't say they're a favorite. I think there are a few teams that are favorites. I think there is no consensus. And I think that's what's great about this NBA season. I spoke to Charles Barkley at the beginning of the season about, this season. And he said to me, what's great about basketball is you're not presuming the Warriors, you're not presuming the Cavs. And it's not a foregone conclusion that LeBron in the Western Conference will make it to the finals because the Clippers have something to say about that. That being said, I think the Raptors are overlooked because Kawhi Leonard is gone. And I think early in the season, many people just assumed, many experts just predicted that the Philadelphia 76ers would just run away with an NBA Finals appearance. The season still hasn't ended and the playoffs haven't started, and there's 20-plus games left to be played. But I'll say this. The Milwaukee Bucks, to me, were my favorite pick from the beginning. But let's not get it twisted. The first game of the season, when the Raptors, when they got their rings that night, took on the New Orleans Pelicans, I thought the Pelicans were going to win that game. And the Raptors did take care of business. That game went into overtime, and what I saw was a Pascal Siakam that wasn't scared.
Yeah.
I've been saying this all season. Pascal Siakam reminds me of Scottie Pippen when Michael retired the first time. And if you remember, he guided, he as well as B.J. Armstrong and head coach Phil Jackson guided the Chicago Bulls through the playoffs, and they ended up losing in the '94 playoffs in the semis against the New York Knicks. And I think Scottie averaged about 22 points that game. If I'm not mistaken, Siakam is around that mark for the season. I like the Raptors' chances, and I think that many people just knew that once LeBron came out of the Eastern Conference and shifted over to the Western Conference, that they'd be that the Raptors could win it all. But what they weren't expecting was a Kawhi Leonard last year to come in there and, prove all doubters wrong post San Antonio. And, he got them a ring and he left. And I think that the sky is the limit for the Raptors now because they have that confidence. Kyle Lowry is clicking on all cylinders. Marc Gasol is still a starting center on that team. You still have Serge Ibaka. You have all those pieces. And it's like almost the Raptors haven't been given their respect just because people assume that with Kawhi gone, that's it. You brought in Rondae Hollis-Jefferson. He can't replace Kawhi Leonard. I watched him during his days in Brooklyn, and, he's a good wedge in that Raptors system. But I think, ultimately it's going to come down to a few teams: the Raptors, the Bucks, the Sixers, and don't sleep on the Indiana Pacers.
Yeah, that's a good point with Indiana. I mean, especially if Oladipo can come back fully healthy. You said something there about the American media maybe sometimes overlooking the Raptors. It's funny you mentioned that, Scoop, because a couple weeks ago I did a piece on my channel. It was pretty much a compilation of the American media disrespecting and overlooking the Raptors. As somebody who works directly within the American media, do you think the American media sometimes does in fact overlook this Raptors team and should be giving them more respect than they typically do?
It's funny. I had tweeted something. I'm going to answer your question, but I tweeted something over the weekend where I basically said, assuming everybody's healthy, here are my top, I think it was either top 5 or top 10 players that I think are in the NBA's elite overall. I mentioned LeBron, I mentioned Steph Curry, I mentioned Harden, I mentioned, Kevin Durant. I mentioned all of the usual suspects, and I didn't mention Giannis, and I got crap for it. And I wasn't really looking to argue. Everybody wants to argue. But then I put out another tweet, and I said, Kawhi Leonard helped win the Raptors their first championship last season. With that championship, does that make him the best Raptor ever over Vince Carter? And a lot of people were just like, well, that's an American point of view that you have because Kyle Lowry is the best Raptor to ever play or to ever shoot up. And someone said that's an American point of view. So that perception of American point of view as it relates to Raptors is something that I never really thought about until maybe last weekend. I don't think I think it's an assumed American point of view because I am American. I've been to Canada a couple of times. Love Canada. But I think many people pay attention to headlines, unfortunately. Many people don't watch basketball. I say this often. I can't eat everybody's potato salad, tuna, and collard greens. And you can't discuss this in the same vein. You can't discuss basketball with everybody. I think that the Raptors, people's attention spans have shifted because Kawhi is in Canada and they haven't actually watched Raptors games. And so I don't necessarily just want to put it on an American point of view. I want to go to sleep peacefully at night. I can see your point of view, but I also think it's just an attention span sort of thing. I think people just like the shiny object and the shiny toy. That's why as much as the Lakers are in first place right now, the way that 24-hour news coverage discusses the Lakers, you think that they had the worst record in the NBA. I mean, this is a team that potentially could win the finals, but so could the Clippers. But so could the Raptors, and so could the Milwaukee Bucks. I think there are so many other teams to discuss aside from the Lakers, aside from the Clippers. I think, the Raptors are the only Canadian basketball team currently in the NBA, who happened to win the championship last season. It's kind of, I can see your point of view as feeling slighted.
mean, that is my point where it's I can speak on behalf of other people here where they feel, Raptors are the defending champs, and then it took them to win 15 in a row for the American media to finally shine some light on the team. But I think that's what makes the Raptors so special. It's that ammo they get. They almost fuel themselves on people doubting them. And again, it's not just the American media. I don't want to just pin that on you guys. It's also people here. I mean, there were so many nights during the Raptors postseason run where, the lead story on SportsCenter here in Canada was a hockey story. And I was sitting there like, are you kidding me? The Raptors are on the verge of something historic here, and we're shining more light on hockey because typically speaking, hockey has always been, in many people's minds, the predominant sport in this country. But we're starting to see that culture shift here in the country, and that is why people are so passionate with the type of attention that they would like this team to receive.
I agree. I think that we're shifting the culture in so many aspects. Just like I think when you look at basketball at large, I think when you saw Michael Jordan give words about Kobe, many people believed that Kobe and Michael didn't get along. And then when you saw Michael speak about Kobe, it's like, oh, well, wait, maybe he did get along with Kobe. I think there's the real deal and then the TV perception of things.
Exactly.
And I think those who watch basketball know, one, who the champs are, the Raptors. Yeah, I mean, literally a Canadian team with their superstar wearing New Balances beat an American Warriors team full of Nike ambassadors. I think that's pretty funny if you ask me. But I think, those who know basketball know who the greats are, and they know who's good. Like Pascal Siakam has been one of the most consistent players this season, but I think people get fascinated by names. Kawhi Leonard's a name, LeBron's a name, Kyrie Irving's a name, Kyle Lowry is a name, but I just think Kyle Lowry's overlooked because he's a blue collar point guard. He's not Steph Curry. He's not Kyrie. He's not. But so what? He's a champion, and I think you have to respect those guys. And I think that's why I'm not willing to just say, look, this is Milwaukee's Eastern Conference to win. Look, this is Philly's Eastern Conference to win. But by the same breath, Milwaukee should have took care of business last year.
Yeah, well, they're up 2-0. I mean,
yeah, they like Philly should have took care of business last year. So it's like, all right, if Toronto's so bad, why do they have a ring and these other people don't? I think the Raptors should get more respect. But I think you nailed it when you talked about it being a hockey town. Like hearing you talk and hearing your accent, you say your accent sounds like Bret the Hitman Hart. I hear you saying about, not about, but it's like, look, man, listen. Years ago, when those expansion teams were implemented into the NBA, and then you saw Vince Carter, the impact that Vince had. I mean, his impact in Canada is as in a hockey town was powerful for black men who look like him. Mm-hmm. Tristan Thompson grew up watching him. He gave Drake confidence of being, a Canadian kid and doing more than just watching hockey or more like. The best NBA team in the world is from Canada, and arguably one of the best rappers in the world is Canadian, who maintains a home in Calabasas and in Houston. So you got to give Canada love, man. I'm not one of those guys that's just so stuck on America. You got to look at the world from a global perspective.
I'm sure the fans can definitely appreciate that coming from you. And lastly, I just want to ask you this. What's one thing you're most looking forward to for the final stretch of the regular season as we head towards the 2020 playoffs? Either a key storyline or maybe a team, something that's happened recently that you're most looking forward to?
Honestly, a few things centered into one. What's going to happen with, seeds 6, 7, and 8 in the NBA's Western Conference? The Portland Trailblazers have played beneath their privilege throughout the course of the season, and a lot of it had to do with injuries. They brought in Carmelo Anthony, and then at times Damian Lillard's been out and hurt. And I want to see them, find a way to make it into the playoffs. That's one. Two, I like the resurgence of the Memphis Grizzlies. They traded Mike Conley Jr., and in the draft they got Ja Morant, who is arguably the NBA's Rookie of the Year. think they're pushing an agenda to make Zion the Rookie of the Year, and Ja might have something to say about it. I spoke with some guys on the Memphis Grizzlies, and they say that Ja's their guy. That's true. And then lastly, I talked about Zion. Will that team make it to the playoffs? They made all those trades. They got a top pick in Zion Williamson. They traded Anthony Davis to the Los Angeles Lakers. I would like to see a Los Angeles Lakers, New Orleans Pelicans first round matchup in the playoffs. That'll be interesting to see. Everybody wants Zion to be the Rookie of the Year and pushing that agenda. Well, if they get an 8 seed, that may happen. As I told you, the first game of the season, the Raptors and the Pelicans played against each other, and I like the Pelicans' heart. This was, of course, without Zion Williamson. He's back. He's putting up stats. What's going to happen? Memphis, Portland, New Orleans. Is they in or is they out? We shall see.
If the Pelicans do match up with the Lakers in that first round, Scoop, that matchup's going to be on pay-per-view. I mean, LeBron versus Zion in a first round playoff matchup, I mean, sign me up. That would be remarkable.
I agree. It's going to be interesting to see if it happens. Pay-per-view, we'll find a way to get our online viewing pleasures in doing it. We don't pay for anything, but we'll find a way to watch it.
That was some great stuff, Scoop. I really appreciate it. Before I let you go, though, we are going to be doing something really cool. I do this with all my guests, so allow me to enlighten you. We are going to be doing some rapid-fire questions. So are you ready to go?
Let's do it.
Okay, first rapid-fire question. Biggest story you ever broke?
Probably, it's a two-part. I said that Kevin Durant was joining the Los Angeles Lakers. That didn't happen. However, his now Brooklyn Nets teammate, Kyrie Irving, joined the Brooklyn Nets, and I had that February of last year. He signed with the Brooklyn Nets that July.
There you go. That's impressive. Next question. Favorite person you ever got to meet or interview?
Couple people. Jay-Z is my favorite rapper. I met Jay. I've been around him a few times. He and I had a conversation some years ago. And when we shook hands, his hands were so soft. And I was like, there's no way a man's hand should be that soft. And I found out later that he uses a product called Carol's Daughter. So when someone told me that story, I did a Jay impersonation. I said, well, I use Carol's Daughter. And that was like a running joke. So, yeah, that was probably the coolest experience, meeting him or, conversing with Diddy. Those were two guys that are pillars in my era, so it was pretty cool.
No, that's dope. They're definitely two guys I look up to as well in the music industry. Next question I have for you here, your biggest inspiration for your craft and why you do what you do.
Few people. Number one, growing up, I grew up watching 60 Minutes on CBS, and a guy by the name of Ed Bradley was one of my inspirations. He was a child prodigy like myself. I started in the business at 12 years old with the Nets, and was in an NBA locker room as a kid with Chris Broussard and Adrian Wojnarowski. So as a kid, I was around those guys. But Ed Bradley, to me, was somebody who asked the tough questions, as well as Barbara Walters. I always liked the way that she was able to maneuver, and radio host locally here in New York City, who's nationally known, is Angie Martinez. I love the flow of her interviews, and those are three people that stand out to me.
Next question: best player in the NBA right now? I'm going to put you on the spot. LeBron, Giannis, or Kawhi, or
LeBron.
Other?
LeBron James.
LeBron? You're still going with LeBron?
LeBron.
In season 17.
Mm-hmm. I am.
I can respect that. Most underrated player in the NBA right now?
Pascal Siakam.
Raptors fans are going to appreciate that one. Most overrated NBA player right now?
Most overrated player in the NBA right now. I won't say overrated. I'll say overhyped. I think a lot of people overhyped Zion before Zion stepped foot on an NBA court. I was at the rookie sophomore game of the World versus the U.S. game, and at the end, it kind of just was kind of frustrating to me. Where at the end of the game, they kept giving him the ball because they wanted him to dunk. Like, I'm of the era you earn it and you let things happen organically. I want to see Zion do well. But I feel like even, where some people may try to be replacing the next LeBron with Zion, LeBron had to earn it. And what LeBron did, he did it organically. And so I feel like there's a force, there's a push on that process. So that's who I'm gonna say is the most overhyped. But he has the ability to live up to that hype, and I'm pulling for him.
And last one I got for you here, Scoop. One song that pumps you up and fuels you. What's your go-to song?
Right now, there's a couple. One is Uptown Vibes by Meek Mill. I like the original version, and I also like the version that was in the Bad Boys for Life soundtrack that it's out now. Probably an album that they say you always remember the music you did when you fell in love or other things. And for me, Jay-Z's Blueprint 2 in high school was that album that got me hyped because I was the public address announcer and DJ for the basketball games at my prep school. And that's carried me through college and more. So, that song, particularly the song Hovey Baby, which I think is track 2 on Blueprint 2, is a song that really gets me hyped while I'm getting work done on deadline.
I love it. I love it. Scoop, that was simply amazing. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule and being on the show. I'm sure the viewers are going to appreciate it. And definitely reach out to Scoop. Hit him up on Twitter, Instagram, all the handles. All of his links are going to be in the description box down below.
Podcast, 2.1 million streams last year on all platforms.
There you go. Sub to his podcast. He's got great guests. And now I got a great guest on my show, courtesy of Scoop. So, Scoop, thank you so much for doing this, man. And hopefully we could do this again soon. I really appreciate this, man.
Let's do it, man. Thank you for having me.
And thanks so much for watching the Luca Rosano Show, guys. Definitely hit that like, subscribe, and have yourselves a great weekend. I'll catch you all again in the next one. Peace out.